talk about what is taking WNBA news by storm. So these first couple articles is simply about Caitlin Clark putting to bed the rumors. Now, Fever Caitlin Clark aims to stay fresh by ball handling. Caitlin Clark stays Fever's top ball handler, but Raven Johnson should basically help her with the defensive scheme. Now, we're going to play a little bit of what Caitlin Clark said, but we have to talk about this article from ESPN because we all heard what she said, but it's been reported that Caitlin Clark had a demand.
A lot of the speculation surrounding Caitlin Clark's role with the Indiana Fever appears to have been settled following her media day appearance. The questions about whether she would step away from primary ball handling duties, something head coach Stephanie White had been hinting at, seemed to have gotten a direct answer from Clark herself. The topic gained serious traction after Clark wrapped up her session at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Wednesday. Reports from ESPN noted that the Fever do have solid options at the guard position. Three-time All-Star Kelsey Mitchell, widely regarded as one of the quickest guards in the entire league, has stepped into that role previously.
ESPN, because we all heard what she said, but it's been reported that Caitlin Clark had a demand as she wrapped up her media day session on Wednesday inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Indiana Fever star ordered the gaggle of media people to come in the middle, which we all seen her do that. But what's standing out is the Fever have option. Three-time All-Star Kelsey Mitchell, who might be the fastest guard in the league, has taken a role before in All-Star Aaliyah Boston, and so on and so forth. Now, Caitlin Clark in this interview stated that she can
Aaliyah Boston also provides flexibility in how the team moves the ball up the court. White had mentioned publicly that sharing ball handling responsibilities could take some of the physical load off Clark, particularly when opposing defenses apply full court pressure all 94 feet. Getting another player to bring the ball up the floor, according to White, was something worth exploring. Clark, however, made her position clear during the media session. In her own words, she performs at the highest level when the ball is in her hands.
She can elevate some pressures with Caitlin Clark having to bring the ball up court, White stated. Now, look at the way teams play, 94 feet all the time, and how do we find ways to get the ball up the floor is gives the ball to somebody else. Now, Caitlin Clark, in her presser yesterday, let it be known that she do better with the ball in her hand. Now, we're not going to go into the whole cycle.
She pointed to transition situations specifically off of rebounds, in open floor scenarios as the areas where she is most dangerous and where she expects to function as the primary handler. She acknowledged that some off-ball situations could come up mainly on dead balls, but that is far from the focal point of how she operates. She also addressed the physical reality of bringing the ball up against pressure every possession, noting that having Raven Johnson, Ty, and others capable of handling duties gives the team different options and makes the offense harder to defend overall. Kelsey Mitchell and even the frontcourt players like Aaliyah Boston, who handled those duties during injury stretches last season, add to that depth. Clark's shooting was also on display during the period, with her form drawing significant attention.
To go into the whole cycle and basically everything regarding that, but here's a little clip. And I want to share with you guys because Caitlin Clark said a lot in that damn pressure. Let's listen to what she had to say. And this part right here really.
I don't know if you guys have heard anything I've said.
No.
Steph has talked about creating depth in the backcourt, especially with your injuries last year, Kelsey going until the wheels fell off. Just what do you think about having Ty and Raven?
For context, Sophie Cunningham shot 53% from three-point range during July through August of the previous season, adding another dimension to what the Fever backcourt could bring this year. The overall picture coming out of Media Day is that Clark is approaching the season with confidence. The roster has genuine depth at multiple positions, and the off-ball experiment Stephanie White floated publicly does not appear to reflect how Clark sees her own game heading into the year. There has been a lot of noise surrounding the Aaliyah Boston contract situation, and a good chunk of it is coming from people who clearly have not looked at the actual numbers. A podcast tied to a TV network pushed the claim that Boston's deal is bigger than A'ja Wilson's.
Until the wheels fell off. Just what do you think about having Ty and Raven kind of backing up in the backcourt? She also talked about kind of you playing off the ball a little bit, get a little bit of court rest. What do you think about playing off the ball?
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be something like that's what you have training camp for, and that's what you have the preseason games for, is to try different lineups and to try different people, and to give the people that are fighting for roster spots a chance to go out there and compete and perform. Like, I'm not going to go out and play 30 minutes on Saturday. That's just not going to be the case. That's not what it's about. It's, obviously I'm going to go out there and compete as hard as I can, but that's not what we need to do.
The reality is much simpler than that. Both players are earning the exact same annual amount for the duration of their respective contracts, both signed at 20% of the salary cap. The only structural difference is that Boston received an extra year on her deal. That decision makes complete sense given that she is 24 years old.
Saturday, that's just not going to be the case. That's not what it's about. It's, obviously I'm going to go out there and compete as hard as I can, but that's not what we need to do. And I think a little bit of off the ball stuff. Like, I think mostly on dead balls. Like, I'm the best. I think I'm the best transition player in the league. That's where I thrive. Everybody knows that's my game. So, getting the ball off of rebound or in transition, like, that's probably when I'm going to be the primary ball handler more than anything. And then, getting off the ball a little bit and
that remark right there, Caitlin let us know that she's going to be the primary ball handler. So that
locking up a young player long-term is standard practice across professional sports, and the Indiana Fever had every reason to do it. Indiana is not exactly a top destination for free agents. Players in the open market tend to gravitate toward Las Vegas. The Fever cannot offer the same pitch the Aces can.
let us know that she's going to be the primary ball handler. So that lead me to believe all this Caitlin Clark off the ball, all this stuff Stephanie White is saying is just not the case. Because Caitlin, in her own words, and this is why the media is doing what they're doing today, and this is why these articles are coming out, because of Caitlin
catching your breath. Like, it is exhausting bringing the ball up 94 feet versus pressure every single time. So we certainly need to find somebody that can handle the ball a little bit and, give me a little bit of a break. And I think Raven and Ty and even
Asking a player like A'ja Wilson to take a pay cut in Indiana might theoretically free up some cap space, but realistically that space would go toward role players rather than difference makers. In Las Vegas, that same sacrifice could have brought in a Joel Lloyd or a Kennedy Carter. The situations are not comparable. The broader argument being pushed in certain media spaces is that nobody should be earning anywhere near what A'ja Wilson earns.
break, and I think Raven and Ty and even other people through camp, Tori's done a great job, and Kels does it a little bit, and even I think our 4s and 5s can do that. You saw AB do that a lot last year when we were really in trouble injury-wise. So I think there's a lot of different things that can give us a lot of different looks and just makes us harder to guard more than anything.
Now, that was Caitlin Clark yesterday, but I just found that to be a profound moment because, for the simple fact, she's letting us know that she's going to be the primary ball handler, bro.
The underlying assumption seems to be that the Supermax contract exists specifically as A'ja Wilson's personal prize rather than as a collective bargaining mechanism. It does not. The three players currently earning the Supermax are Kelsey Mitchell, A'ja Wilson, and Nneka Ogwumike. All three are drawing identical checks.
Cap, and Aaliyah got an extra year. Why? Because Aaliyah is 24 years old. Aaliyah is 24 years old. And yeah, of course, you're going to sign a young player up long term, especially when you are the Fever. When you are a team that has not won. And let's be real, free agents are not wanting to come to Indiana. Free agents want to go to Vegas. So you could say, you know what, A'ja, if you're okay taking a pay cut, we'll be able to bring in this other player. That doesn't happen with the Fever.
Aaliyah Boston is not even on the Supermax this year. There was also a separate claim floating around that Audi Crook signed the third highest contract in the WNBA behind Wilson and Boston. That is not accurate either. Crook is earning WNBA Supermax money to continue playing at Oklahoma State.
Able to bring in this other player. That doesn't happen with the Fever. With Indiana, it's, okay, are you okay willing to take a pay cut? That's fine. Yeah, we might be able to, if you take a pay cut, we might be able to bring in, I don't know, insert random bench player here. Whereas the Aces, a little bit of a pay cut, might have brought in, Joel Lloyd and Kennedy Carter. But yeah, it's one of.
As for who actually ends up taking home the most money in a given season, that comes down to performance bonuses tied to the Commissioner's Cup and the championship. If the Liberty capture both, players like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu could easily end up as the highest earners that year. The A'ja Wilson MVP conversation is worth addressing too, because the media narrative around her awards has been particularly one-sided. Going back over the last several seasons, the list of WNBA awards that commentators labeled controversial turns out to be literally every single award that Wilson did not win, starting from when she took her first MVP in 2020 all the way through 2025.
But yeah, it's one of those things here anyway that we heard on the podcast, basically that nobody should be paid even close to A'ja Wilson, and that, you know, isn't it bad that another player is making more than A'ja Wilson? They're not. They're making the same amount of money. And I hate this narrative, and it's the one thing I've always hated in the WNBA. This narrative that A'ja Wilson has to win every single award. Because, by the way, I'm not going to argue.
Every title, every defensive honor, every accolade that went to someone else was immediately reframed as a controversial snub. In 2024, Wilson was being called a unanimous MVP from the very first game of the season before any meaningful basketball had been played. Her team came within a single result of finishing as the 5th seed. Meanwhile, Nneka Ogwumike was posting better efficiency numbers, playing stronger defense, and leading a team that won close to 40 games and nearly claimed the top seed.
That A'ja Wilson did not deserve to win MVP in 2024. Or in 2024. But if she won MVP as the 4th seed because she was so great statistically, why did Fee Collier not win MVP in 2025? Like, for me, I was like, it was a really close one. But A'ja Wilson, I'm not joking.
The unanimous MVP call was essentially decided by the media before the season started, and that made it politically dangerous for any voter to push back. The question of whether Wilson was the best player in the league in 2025 is more complicated. Through 28 games of a 4-4-game season, she was sitting 5th in the MVP race. Her team did put together a strong run after that stretch, and Ogwumike's injury shifted the conversation.
True, I'm not joking when I say this. It's a 44-game season. Through 28 games, A'ja Wilson was ranked 5th in the MVP race. And yes, they had a really good streak, and Fee got injured. But I'm like, Fee shot 50, 40, 90 on the best team in the league. And everyone's like, oh, A'ja has to get paid the most because she won a title. Yeah, because Fee got injured. Like, a year ago, we were having conversations with who was the best player, Fee or A'ja. And the conversation shifted to, well, Fee's team was much better. Fee's been playing much better.
But Ogwumike shot 5-0, 4-0, 9-0 on the best team in the league. That is not a footnote. The 2025 finals also remain a sore subject for those who watched closely.
Fee's been playing much better. And, like, we have to change that. And yeah, A'ja Wilson, you know what? She won a title, won a finals MVP. I'm not going to argue she's not the best player in the world. Let's be completely real. I'm not going to argue that she is not the best player in the world right now. Because at this stage, I don't think Fee's been injured for a while. It is.
A block by Alana Smith in the closing moments was reviewed. Overturned discussion aside, Lynx players were celebrating on the floor because they believed the call was clean. The officiating in that series drew sharp criticism from multiple corners. None of this is meant to diminish what A'ja Wilson has built. 3 championships.
Fee's been injured for a while. It is what it is. She's been the best. But, like, people are saying, oh, yeah, you know, A'ja Wilson has to get paid the most. But, like, what about the fact that there is a Supermax contract and every single player who signed a core designation is entitled to the same Supermax? It's like saying, oh, LeBron James, isn't it a joke? And it's not saying that, like, oh, you know, there should be some sort of a rule that allows A'ja to get paid more. By the way, if there's any rule that allows A'ja to get paid more, Caitlin Clark is worth twice that, because at the end of
4 MVPs, born in 1996, meaning her best years may still be ahead. If her career ended today, the GOAT conversation would have to include her name near the top. That is not in dispute.
Caitlin Clark is worth twice that, because at the end of the day, the money she brings in is crazy. That being said, you're now seeing people on actual media, ran by networks, complaining about Aaliyah Boston getting paid a longer contract than A'ja Wilson, not understanding it's the same fucking contract. Like, I actually saw something and it was like, oh, elite, or what's it? Audie Crook signs the third highest contract after AJ Wilson and Leah Boston to play in college. First of all, she's getting paid the WNBA.
What is in dispute is the idea that the salary cap structure, the core designation system, and the Supermax contract are all supposed to function as tools to guarantee Wilson remains the highest paid player in the league permanently. That is not what those mechanisms are for. They exist to reward a class of elite players equally. The media pushing the opposite narrative is either not reading the CBA or is choosing to ignore it for the sake of a simpler story.